Jim.
Sir, why did the president tweet this morning that he'd like to see the Senate Intelligence Committee investigate news outlets and I guess this quest to go after fake news? Does he value the First Amendment as much as he values the Second Amendment?
Absolutely. The president is a incredible advocate of the First Amendment. But with the First Amendment, you have, hold on, I allowed you to finish. With the First Amendment, with those freedoms also come responsibilities. And you have a responsibility to tell the truth, to be accurate. I think right now when we've seen recent information that says that only 5% of media coverage has been positive about this president and this administration, while at the same time you have the stock market and economic confidence at an all-time high. ISIS is on the run. Unemployment's at the lowest it's been in 17 years. We've cut regulations at a historic pace. We're fixing the VA for our vets. You've only found 5% of your time to focus on some of those big issues. And frankly, those are the issues most Americans care about. Not a lot of the things that you cover, not a lot of the petty palace intrigue that you spend your time on. I think that we need to move towards a certainly more fair, more accurate, and frankly, a more responsible news media for the American people.
May I follow, Sarah, if I could follow up on that.
Sorry, I'm going to try to get to everybody, and like I told your colleague, if I have time.
Very quickly, though, should Congress investigate news outlets?
No. Hold on, I'm going to try to get to everybody
Sarah,
today.
thank you.
Kristen.
Sarah, was the president upset that his Secretary of State didn't deny calling him a moron in his public remarks yesterday?
Look, as the Secretary of State said, this is a petty, ridiculous accusation, and frankly, I think it's beneath the Secretary of State to weigh in on every rumor out there. His spokesperson, however, did come out and clarified that the Secretary of State had never used those words.
What's your response to those
John?
who say the president has undercut the Secretary of State? Sarah, just quickly before you move on.
I think
what's
it's
your
the
reaction?
premise of that question is absolutely ridiculous. The president can't undercut his own cabinet. The president is the leader of the cabinet. He sets the tone, he sets the agenda, and I think that question makes no sense because of that. David?
Just one for you. We now know that Secretary Price was essentially let go for his private jet travel, and we know that I think in close proximity to his firing, Secretary Perry took a private jet. We know that Kellyanne Conway was along for one of Secretary Price's rides. At the same time, the president has now spent, I think, 17 weekends at taxpayer expense for the flights, either at Mar-a-Lago or Bedminster, at the cost of $180,000 an hour for Air Force One, and is going to take the plane to a fundraiser in North Carolina this weekend. So here's the question. Is he not setting the tone that tells his cabinet members that this kind of misuse of taxpayer money, or overuse, if you will, is okay?
I'll start with North Carolina. My understanding is that for a political event that'll be reimbursed for any political travel. The president is
The first class rate that Secretary Price paid them.
I'd have to check on that, but the president is in a certainly very different position. He's not allowed to travel in a different way other than in a secure airplane as Air Force
Every
One.
weekend, does he? I mean, he could stay here and work like the former
The president
did.
certainly hasn't been there every weekend, and every weekend that he's traveling, no matter where he is, the president is working. He's hosted foreign leaders on several of those trips, which have led to some great accomplishments. They've led certainly to putting further pressure, unprecedented pressure on North Korea, in large part because of the relationship development that's taken place at some of those weekends that you're attacking for. This is a president that is committed to helping move his agenda forward, and certainly I think that those weekends have been very successful in doing that. Alex?
I want to ask about the president's tweet this morning about the Senate Intelligence Committee. Is he frustrated with how long the investigation into alleged Russian election interference is taking?
I think more importantly than the president being frustrated, I think the American people are frustrated. The Senate Intel Committee told us yesterday that after nearly 9 months of investigated, that's included more than 100 interviews over more than 250 hours, 4,000 pages of transcripts, 100,000 pages of documents, interviewing officials in the intelligence community who wrote the report on Russian election meddling, interviewing relevant Obama administration officials, and talking to every Trump campaign official they've requested. It's literally found zero evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. I think that the American people would like them to focus on some other things. I know that we certainly have said this all along, and we're glad that as they continue this process, they're coming to the same conclusion. Trey?
Sarah, does President Trump believe the Senate Intelligence Committee should investigate American media organizations?
I don't know that that's the case, but I do think that we should call on all media to a higher standard, and certainly I think I weighed in very clearly what our position is when Jim asked a question earlier.
Intelligence Committee looking into the fake news networks in our country.
Look, I think that you have a lot of responsibility, and a lot of times false narratives create a bad environment, certainly aren't helpful to the American people, and you have a responsibility to provide and report fair and accurate details, and when we don't, that's, I think, troubling for all of us.
Sarah, you've said several times that the White House wants to be part of the conversation on bump stocks. The president said himself this week, we'll be talking about gun laws as time goes by. But you also suggested, I think, and just to clear it up, that the time to talk about that is after the investigation has gotten to another stage or wrapped up. I mean, if not now, when is it appropriate to start having this conversation about policy?
I haven't said that the investigation has to be fully complete before conversations can take place, but I think we have to be careful that before we go out and try to talk about things that prevented something, we need to know what caused it in the first place, and we're not there yet. We're still in that process. We certainly want to, again, look at every way that we could prevent anything even remotely close to this from ever happening again, and we want to be part of that process, and we hope to. April.
Sarah, over the last couple of days, the president has used the word fear, hate, and cruelty. And since you're saying you're having conversations on different things as it relates to Las Vegas, what is the conversation when it comes to the issue of terror? You've not talked about it yet. You've not classified it as such. And talking to people from both sides of the aisle, they're saying there's no one settled or universal definition for terrorism, but we've seen Timothy McVeigh with Oklahoma City. We've seen Ruff with Mother Emanuel in Charleston. I mean, under all circumstances that we've seen so far, people were intimidated, scared, ambushed, military style, in a planned, thought out effort, be it whether it's political or not. They were terrorized. Is this administration willing to start, since they're having conversations about other things, was this terror, domestic terror?
I think that's something for the law enforcement communities to define and identify. I think the bigger thing that this administration certainly has been focused on is the prevention and looking at how we can stop things like this from ever happening again. I don't care how you label it, it's something that should never take place in this country, and this president is committed to looking for ways to prevent it. Hallie?
What about that shirt?
Sorry, I've limited everybody to one question today.
Had that shirt saying nasty. What does this White House believe? The president went there. It was very controversial, his appearance
Actually,
there.
it wasn't controversial.
Well, some people
it was
about
actually
the-
widely praised even by a Democrat governor. I think that it is sad that the mayor of San Juan chose to make that a political statement instead of a time of focusing on the relief efforts. The president invited her to be part of that conversation. He specifically asked in the meeting where many were present, including a couple dozen other mayors who were very happy with the recovery efforts, the governor, the congresswoman. He opened the floor up for discussion, and she actually made zero comments. To me, that would have been the time and the place that she should have weighed in and asked for what she needed and laid out what she was asking for San Juan. She didn't. Instead, she chose to wait until the president left and then criticize him on TV, which I think is the wrong thing for her to do for her constituents. And I hope next time she's given the opportunity to help her constituents, she'll take it. Hallie?
I have a question for you. You've made very clear that the president is open to the conversation surrounding bump stocks and perhaps other regulations on gun control. Does he want to lead that conversation? Will he get out and use the power of his presidential platform to push for more regulation on, for example, bump stocks, which law enforcement officials have said were used in Vegas?
I think right now the position of the president has been to lead on the effort of uniting our country. We've had a country in mourning, and I think we saw what kind of leader this president wants to be by what he did yesterday. He went in, he met with the law enforcement officials, he met with the medical teams, he met with the survivors of that horrific tragedy. Obviously, this president wants to be a leader. I think he's demonstrated that. I think he'll continue to do that in this process. If you want me to get down into the weeds on specific policy, I don't think we're there yet. Right now, we want to lead the effort on bringing our country together and offering comfort to those that have been hurt over the last several days. Mike, sorry, again, I'm going to take this the last one, Mike.
There's some talk that some of the main facilitators of the Iran nuclear deal are significant contenders for the Nobel Peace Prize. Is the White House aware of that, and do you have a thought on these folks being talked about as potential winners?
I'm not sure about the Nobel Peace Prize process, and certainly not as it pertains to that, but I think we've been very clear what our position is on the deal. That hasn't changed just because some people may receive an award for it. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good day.
Sarah, you said no on Congress investigating news outlets, right?